The Bible is not meant to be taken literal. Plain and simple, it's a book of allegory. It's a book of parables. It's not supposed to be interpreted as a literal, real thing. Okay, it's supposed to be a spiritual book, not a history book. And we know this because nowhere in the Bible does it tell us to take any of it literal. But what it does tell us is that it's a mystery. Okay, you have all of this language from Paul talking about the mystery of Jesus Christ, the mystery of God, the mystery of the kingdom of heaven, this knowledge of the mysteries. He's got this gnosis that he's trying to convey to people, but not everybody understands it. Not everybody gets it. You see, it's all allegory that is pointing to some deeper spiritual insights about ourselves. Okay? And, whether or not we have a spirit, I understand a lot of people like to debate that. They like to say, well, they equate the spirit with the brain. So when you're dead, your spirit doesn't exist, right? It's just a concept. And that's fine. We don't know. That's the point, is it's all about psychology. That's what the spirit is. It's your psychological being. Okay? Now, that's something else that we have to understand about the mysteries, right? Is that the mysteries pertain to this physical realm, what we know, see, and hear, and taste, and feel. All those things that are actually real in reality. That's what the mysteries, the spiritual mysteries, are trying to reveal to us. They're trying to get us more connected with reality. Okay? So even a lot of people that are claiming that they are spiritual, even they don't get it, because in their mind, they are still being misled to thinking that there's something that there's not. Okay? And so what this does, allegory and parables, they help us to have a more intimate connection with what is reality. But when people take this stuff literally, they disconnect themselves from that experience. For example, resurrection, okay? If people think that the resurrection of the physical dead body is a literal thing, then they are committing spiritual suicide. They're committing critical thinking suicide, and they are limiting themselves, stagnating their spiritual growth by stopping at a literal interpretation of things. So they will live their whole life waiting for something someday that's just not going to happen. And meanwhile, they have written off personal growth, personal spiritual understanding, because they've just decided to go with the literal interpretation of things. And so there's not much to figure out, if you're going to accept Scripture as literal, because there's no deeper digging there. So it just defeats the whole purpose of everything that the Bible says. I don't know how people just overlook all of this mystery language and think that it's meant to be taken literal. A good example is in Matthew chapter 13, verse 10, where Jesus, it says that, "And the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou to them in parables? And he, Jesus, said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given." So even Jesus Christ said that the kingdom of heaven is a mystery. If it's literal, you don't have to call it a mystery, okay? So that's the thing, is it's not meant to be taken literal. So when Jesus is talking about all this heaven stuff, this resurrection stuff, it's not meant to be taken literal, because people have to understand that the kingdom of heaven is within, okay? The kingdom of heaven is within. It even says that in the Bible. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God? Know ye not that the kingdom of heaven is within you? Right? So if you are the temple of God and God resides in you, then why are you praying outside to something outside of yourself? If God is in you, why are you praying to the sky? It's an allegory. It's about self-empowerment understanding who you really are, coming to know and embrace your connection with creation, divine reality, what is the all in the present moment. So to accept the Bible as a literal historical text is to dramatically hinder your spiritual experience. If you take the Bible literally, you're committing spiritual suicide. You're separating yourself from the fullness of the gospel and the knowledge or gnosis that Paul proclaimed his gospel contained. If we accept the Bible as a literal historical text, what we run into is plagiarism, contradictions, unreliable sources, inaccuracy, and the list goes on, right? And so this is why we have what are known as cafeteria Christians. They can't make sense of it all, so they just pick and choose what they want to believe, what parts of the Bible make them feel good, what parts of the Bible make sense to them, right? That's why we have so many denominations teaching different doctrines and theologies, and they're all just byproducts of interpreting the Holy Bible as literal. A good example of running into problems when we take the Bible literally is once again found in Matthew 24, verse 34. Some of you probably already know what I'm about to tell you, but there's a problem because Jesus is trying to explain to his disciples how the world's going to end, when it's going to end, and when he's going to return. But the problem is that in verse 24, Jesus says this, "Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled." That generation that he was talking to has passed already. They've all died. If you take this book literally, they've all died. And none of those things have happened yet. Jesus didn't return. The world didn't come to an end. That generation that he was talking to, his disciples, he said, this generation, he was talking to his disciples right then and there, and he said, this generation shall not pass until all these things are fulfilled. So we have a problem there. That's what you call a failed prophecy. Or is it? Perhaps there's a deeper meaning to this. Perhaps there is an allegory hidden in there, a gem that can reveal some deep thought within yourself, some deep perspective, right? Some deep contemplation about what's going on in yourself. So once again, just a good example, actually probably one of the best examples in the Bible that is a problem if it's interpreted literally. So since Jesus hasn't returned and the world hasn't ended yet, we have to decide for ourselves just what in the world are the scriptures talking about. Okay, what does it mean the world will end and Jesus will return? It was a false prophecy. If you take it literally, it was a false prophecy. It was a failed prophecy. It did not come true because his disciples died, and none of it happened before they died. He was talking to their generation. He said, your generation shall not pass until these things happen, and they didn't happen. So, and don't please just, keep your, some of the apostles may still be alive. I'm not even going to go there. Listen, you have to, draw some lines. I know everybody gives some allowance, right, for what they believe, what doesn't make sense, but they believe it anyways. I do it a little bit, I admit, but saying that Jesus' prophets are still alive, I'm not going to subscribe to that, so won't even go there with that. So, but what we want to talk about is what it really means to have the world end and to have Christ return. So what does it mean to say that the world will end and that Christ will return? Well, since it's not supposed to be taken literally, we will examine the allegory, the deeper spiritual meaning behind the scriptures. Basically, what it's saying is that by world coming to an end, it's referring to the world that each and every one of us have in here. We all have a world within us. The world that is within us consists of ideas, concepts, viewpoints on things, our, like I said, perception of the world that we live in. This, has a lot to do with the way we were raised, the things that we like. It's basically our false sense of self. It's this mental constructed idea and concept of ourselves. All right. It's not who we really are, because a lot of these things that are in our world, these perceptions of ourselves and the world around us, they keep changing, right? Over time, we learn something new. And sometimes because we learn something we didn't know, we have to disregard everything we thought we knew. So that idea of ourselves, that perception of ourselves is always changing. It's not who we really are. Who we really are is that symbol of Christ, right? That higher consciousness, that Christ consciousness. And whenever Christ returns, what that means is that we have finally grasped the concept. We finally realize that we have a false self that we have believing was our real self for so many years. All right? So when Christ returns, that's just simply symbolic of us becoming enlightened about the world that we live in. We're starting to see reality, right? We see things for what they really are, that our mind is just a mental construct, right? So it's really simple. Each and every one of us has a world. And so whenever we become enlightened, and that meaning Christ returns, symbolically, when Christ returns, we become enlightened in here. This whole thing takes place in our minds, okay? And so Christ, when he returns, he saves us from this world that is ending, right? The world ends whenever you become enlightened and see things for what they are. So we can either die in our ignorance, right? We can die never knowing the truthfulness of ourselves, and then the world will come to an end in that way, because the world within us is obviously going to end when we die, right? Our false notion of self, our false self will die when we physically, literally die, because the brain will die. Or we can do the spiritual death before we physically die. We can watch that world end within ourselves, that false world, that mental concept, that mental construct. We can watch it end, and that way we can allow our Christ self to resurrect, right? We can allow our Christ self to come back, right? So it's all just a psychological process that's taking place within ourselves. So Christ will return, indeed, but it won't be the imaginary Christ that everybody's waiting on to literally come. It's going to be the Christ in here that returns, because when the scriptures tell us that the end of the world is coming and that Christ is going to return, what it's talking about by the end of the world is the end of the world in here, okay? When Christ comes, that is symbolic of you finally coming to light and understanding the world that you live in, that all of these mental constructs in here, they are the false self. They create the false self, okay? This false world that exists within here. So when Christ comes, that is symbolic of you finally realizing that you have a false self, a false identity in here that you need to shake. You need to get rid of that. You need to understand it. You need to be able to utilize it as a tool. You need to be able to create and build with it, okay? Create a new perspective on life, okay? So it's not talking about a literal end to the world that you actually physically live in. It's talking about the end of your false mental constructs within your mind. You're coming to light. You're becoming enlightened. That is what is meant by Christ coming back after the world has ended, okay? So if you know Hermetic philosophy, you know the principle of mentalism. And basically all that means is that the universe is God's mind, okay? And everything that exists within the universe, God thought into existence, okay? So it's the same thing within us. We are a mirror image. We are made in God's image. So we have a world within us too. And within that world, we create things. Everything that exists in that world, we created in this world, okay? So we are a replica. We are the microcosm of the macrocosm, okay? We are a spitting image of our Father in heaven, okay? That's all it is. And once you understand that, you've come a long way. So a good symbol that we're all familiar with that would, explain something to us about ourselves is the triangle. A lot of times you'll see like the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on top of it. That is a good symbol to represent what is taking place within ourselves. For those who have already seen their world end and Christ return, you would have that image. You would have the all-seeing eye on top of that triangle, and the 2 points of the lower 2 points of the triangle being duality. See, so you are above duality. You see it for what it is, right? Your perception has been opened, okay? You see it. So the 2 points on the bottom of the pyramid can represent duality, and the all-seeing eye on top represents you coming to enlightenment and actually seeing. Your view has been expanded. You can now see the world for what it is. It's a world of duality. We live in a realm of duality. It creates our existence. Another good symbol is the square. You'll see this sometimes in Masonic fraternities, right? When you see it in this position, it means that this is you, and the 2 points on top are duality. And when you see it in this position, it means that you lack understanding. You don't realize the realm of duality that you live in. You haven't come to full Christ consciousness yet. You don't know how to manipulate the realm of duality, how it works in your life, right? You just allow things just to happen to you. You don't actually create your existence. Your existence just sort of happens. You're just down here, right? Now, if you see it like this means that you have come to understanding about the world of duality. Now you are above duality, the two coexisting points that create existence, right? You are now able to look down. You have risen above. You've grown. You become enlightened, okay? So that's another good symbol, is the all-seeing eye, the pyramid. So I guess the question is, has the world ended? Has Christ returned? In you? In me? Have we allowed that to happen? Have we taken the steps to make that happen? It's up to us to do the homework and the research. For some people, it comes easy. For some people, they are really attached to their ideas and their concepts and their perception of the world. It's been deeply rooted in them from birth. And a lot of times it's through religion, right? It comes through many forms, but it creates your view and perspective of the world. And sometimes people can't shake it. It's a very hard, long battle. It has to be something that, you really want in order to make it happen. You have to be able to look at the world for what it really is and face reality that no, people don't resurrect from the dead. Okay? People don't ascend into heaven. Stuff like that, stuff that defies physics and reason and logic. We have to decide whether or not we want to find a deeper purpose in these metaphors, this allegory. Do we want to, be bound and captive by these literal physical concepts and ideas, or do we want to search for the deeper allegory meaning, right? Do we want to find out what this is saying about us in the world we live in? So it's up to us. We have to make that decision. So let me know if you have witnessed Christ come in your life. Till next time, peace.